Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Fisher, and this is our channel, Our Scientology Stories, Peeling the Onion. My co-host, Janice Gillum Grady, is in Florida currently, but I wanted to do this video and get it out to you because I just recently saw an article written by Tony Ortega that just the other day was the 38th anniversary of the death of L. Ron Hubbard. And so I wanted to share with you some photographs and also my thoughts. I was there present during that time period and at the event, and I wanted to share some of my thoughts and insights regarding that event because it was definitely a big change in terms of Scientology's history. Things started to fall apart a few years before that, but then it really changed after Hubbard died, because that's when the power struggle happened, and everyone ended up with David Miscavige running things, and the abuses increased and all that sort of stuff. Not to say it was perfect under Hubbard, but it was definitely growing and much bigger when he was alive, and this was a major turning point when he passed away. So anyway, I wanted to share these things with you, and I hope you enjoy the show. And please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. It's Our Scientology Stories, Peeling the Onion. We greatly appreciate it. Anyway, let's get started. L. Ron Hubbard is dead, right? And that was January 24th, 1986 was the day that he died. And they had an event about 3 days later on January 27th, 1986 to announce his death. Now, what was going on during this time period? When Hubbard, he had built up Scientology. Obviously, he had started it, built it up, and it had lasted for years and years, and there were thousands of followers all over the world. But he actually died in seclusion, and I'm going to go over some of that with you now. This is the location. It's a map, okay? Hubbard was in hiding during that time period. He had been for about 6 years. He was hiding from the Internal Revenue Service and all the different lawsuits at the time. And he wanted to be, if you look on the lower right, it says Int Base. That's the Gilman Hot Springs location where Golden Era Studios is. And that's where he wanted to be, where he could do his tech training films and also continue his research and do all the different things he wanted to do. But in 1980, that location was blown, meaning it was made known to authorities, and Hubbard went on the run with two people, Pat and Annie Broker. They happened to be the odd people out because they were with Hubbard at the time, and they were a married couple. And so they left with him, and this had been done before with other messengers, trusted messengers with him before. But this time it was Pat and Annie Broker, and little did they know that when they left in 1980 that they would be gone until January of 1986, almost 6 years with Hubbard on their own, in hiding. He spent the first several years traveling around the country in an RV. He wrote Battlefield Earth. He wrote Mission Earth, the big science fiction books. And then he also was continuing, his research into the upper OT levels of Scientology. But basically, he was secluded. They could not get to him. The only way to communicate was through a courier run. Pat Broker would meet with people in remote locations where information and messages and letters and those type of things would be transferred back and forth, including cash money. He paid for everything cash because they didn't want to be able to trace him. Anyway, the Int Base is down there on the lower right, okay? And then Big Blue in the middle there, that's in Hollywood, California. That's the Big Blue Cedars of Sinai hospital area. And then if you look up in the upper left, that's Creston, California. And this is where Hubbard lived up until the day he died, after he got off the road in his RV. He lived there with Pat and Annie Broker and another gentleman by the name of Steve Pfaff, who was basically a caretaker and was a longtime Scientologist. Anyway, they lived in seclusion under assumed names, and nobody knew this location until shortly before L. Ron Hubbard died. Not even David Miscavige knew where this was. Nobody knew where this was. And that's where Hubbard was at the time of his death. I wanted to mention a couple of things. January 24th is the day that he died. That weekend was the Super Bowl weekend in 1986, and it was the year that the 1985 Chicago Bears, the famous defense and the team, actually played the New England Patriots, and they won the Super Bowl, and it's the only Super Bowl Chicago Bears have ever won. But the reason I bring this up is that David Miscavige disappeared right before that weekend. And nope, he didn't tell me where he was going or anything like that. He was up at the international base, and normally we would watch the Super Bowl game because we're not allowed to watch TV when we were in the Sea Organization. But for like a big sporting event, he would have it on his television. We'd be able to watch it there. Well, he just disappeared along with Shelley, and they were gone. We had no idea where they were at, and that was not an uncommon occurrence. But it was a couple of days later when all of a sudden we got told that we needed to get everybody at the base in their Sea Org uniforms and were to report to Los Angeles to the Hollywood Palladium on January 27th for a special event, and that we would be briefed as to what was going on then. So this is the Hollywood Palladium. This is a picture of the Hollywood Palladium. It's on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood, and it's famous. It's been there for years and years and years. They've held award ceremonies there, concerts, that type of thing. But they basically booked it, and they've packed it out with all the Sea Org members in the LA area, as well as the ones up at the Golden Era Productions and the International Management Base, as well as public. And they were briefed just to be there at a certain time. They weren't told why or anything like that. And so basically that's where they held the event on the 27th of January 1986. The event started and began, and for the first time, the world got to meet David Miscavige. He was not a public figure in Scientology. Public Scientologists would not know who he was. Only people that really knew who he was were Sea Org members who had had any kind of dealings with him, and he was not somebody that was out in the open, which he later became years later. This is a picture of him, and he was the master of ceremonies at that event. He's 23 years old in that picture there. When Hubbard died, Miscavige was 23 years old. I was just 2 years older. I was 25 years old. And basically, we know the story. Miscavige is eventually going to take over control of the Church of Scientology. But anyway, this is him at the event, and I wanted to share some of the transcript from the event. This is courtesy of Tony Ortega. I want to give him credit. He published this transcript on his Substack account, and you all should give him a read. And if you want to see the entire thing. But I'm going to go ahead and share this right now to the screen. Just bear with me for a second here, and I'll read portions of it for you. 1 second. Okay, here you go. Anyway, it started the event with some really spooky music, and I arrived there with my wife, and we sat down up front where the messengers and people were sitting. And as soon as I heard the music, we both suspected that L. Ron Hubbard had died, that something was wrong, but we weren't sure. But we could tell because the mood of the auditorium, it was definitely something heavy was going on. Anyway, David Miscavige came out and he said, thank you. Hello, my name is David Miscavige. I'm very happy that you could all make it to this important briefing this evening. In 1980, LRH moved off the lines so that he could continue his writing and research without any distractions. For many years, Ron had said that if he were given the time and if others wore their hats and did their jobs, running and expanding the church, he would be able to concentrate on and complete all of his researches into the upper OT levels so that the bridge would be laid out in full for us all. Over the past 6 years, LRH has indeed been intensely researching the upper bands of OT. All right, so this is basically Miscavige's introductory statement saying that's why Hubbard had been gone for the previous 6 years. And the only contact the public had with him was every once in a while he would record what's called a Ron's Journal, and would be played at New Year's or on his birthday at an event. And it'd just be a brief sort of PR statement from him to let everybody know he was still alive. But in actuality, He had been on the run from the Internal Revenue Service. They don't tell you that. And also the other lawsuits and things that were going on, the corporate sort out and stuff. Miscavige had been charged with getting what was called an all clear, meaning that all of these cases and distractions would be taken away so that Hubbard could return and be out in the open again at Golden Era Productions, doing his movies and doing the things he wanted to do. So that basically was a lie in terms of what really happened there. I'm going to move on here. Approximately 2 weeks ago, he completed all of his researches he had set out to do. He was now moved on to his next OT level of OT research. This level is beyond anything any of us ever imagined. This level is in fact done in an exterior state, meaning that it is done completely exterior from the body. Okay, so they're basically, setting everybody up to let everybody know that he's basically leaving his body. He's gone. Then this is like some new OT level type of thing. I'll carry on. At this level of OT, the body is nothing more than an impediment, an encumbrance to any further gain as an OT. Thus, at 2000 hours, Friday, the 24th of January, AD 36, that's after Dianetics 36 or 1986, L. Ron Hubbard discarded the body he had used in this lifetime for 74 years, 10 months, and 11 days. The body he had used to facilitate his existence in this mess, that means basically the world, universe, had ceased to be useful and in fact had become an impediment to the work he now must do outside of its confines. Okay, that's him announcing that L. Ron Hubbard had died. His body died. Okay, and they're making it sound like, he did so causatively and on his own volition. Okay, when in fact he had had a stroke. He had had several strokes apparently in the months leading up to his death, and he had the final stroke, on January 24th, 1986. He died alone in his Bluebird recreational vehicle parked on a property in Creston, California, which I'm going to show you the location and some of the facilities there. But that's how he died. He died from a stroke, just like any other man or a woman that has a body that happens to. And that's how he died. It was not like, I'm going to go off and, I've become such a big operating thetan and I'm such a powerful being that I'm going to carry on and do things without my body. He basically died. That was it. And this is basically just dressing it up to let the public know that. I'm going to carry on here on another part here. The being, meaning the spiritual being, we knew as L. Ron Hubbard still exists. However, the body he had could no longer serve his purposes. This decision was one made at complete cause by L. Ron Hubbard. Although you may feel grief, understand that he did not and does not. Okay, so he basically is letting everybody know, well, Hubbard did this on his own, and that, there was nothing, outside of the realm of, him being sick or anything like that. He causatively left his body, and that you should not feel grief. Because I remember when this was announced, you could feel the grief coming over the crowd in the Hollywood Palladium, because L. Ron Hubbard was the founder of something that we believed could save planet Earth and could save mankind. And we were all dedicated Scientologists and Sea Org members. So you got to understand that this was a very powerful thing, and it was very powerful moment that he had died and passed away. And no matter how they dressed it up, the fact is that we all felt a closeness to him and that he was gone. And they're trying to dress it up saying, oh, well, no, he's causatively going off to do whatever else it is that he wanted to do. Okay. I'm going to carry on here. Earl Cooley was the attorney for Scientology at the time, and he was an attorney that Scientology used on various lawsuits and all that. But anyway, he was the person that was sent up to examine Hubbard's body and get his will, and also make sure that his body was cremated. And I'm just going to read a portion of what he had to say, because he came out to speak at the event. And this is Earl Cooley speaking, and this is just a portion of it. There are several very important matters that I wish to bring to your attention. First, the body of L. Ron Hubbard was sound and strong and fully capable of serving this mighty Thetan for many years, had that suited his purposes. That's a complete lie. He was in really bad shape. He had lost a lot of weight. He had had several strokes, and he was in very poor health. That was a lie that Earl Cooley is stating there. Second, in the performance of my duties, I have examined LRH's will, and I am proud and privileged to announce to you that after making generous provision for his wife and certain other family members, he left the very substantial fruits of his labors in this lifetime, including all money, real estate, tangible personal property, and of paramount importance, all copyrights to and for the benefit of Scientology. Okay, that's basically letting everybody know that he left all of his money to Scientology. That's what they're trying to tell you. When they say that that he where is it at here? That he made generous provision for his wife and certain other family members. That's a lie. Okay, Hubbard had over $350 million in his estate when he passed away, something like that. He gave each of his children $100,000, the ones who were still in good standing. That would have been Diana, Suzette, and Arthur. Okay, and Mary Sue Hubbard, I think she got $300,000, and then they bought a house for her. But that's all they got out of the millions and millions of dollars that Hubbard had in his personal estate. And basically, the family members were basically made to sign that they would not challenge the will, that basically they would go along with the fact that Hubbard was giving his money to Scientology. And in fact, over the years, they've been kept on the dime, from what I'm told. They still receive money from time to time from Scientology, basically to keep them quiet after all the abuses and everything that happened. And so that's the true story about what happened with his family and his money. People like his first son, L. Ron Hubbard Jr., and they didn't get any inheritance at all. And the one daughter that he had with his second wife, he didn't even acknowledge that she even existed. So nothing went to them at all. Now, what happened with all the money is that it was held, and Norman Starkey was made the trustee. Norman Starkey was a long-term Sea Org member. He was made the trustee of L. Ron Hubbard's estate, and he had to hold on to it until Scientology got tax-exempt status from the IRS, and then the money was to go to the Church of Spiritual Technology, which also needed to have tax-exempt status. And then at that point, that money would be transferred to Church of Spiritual Technology, and that's the money that was provided for them to archive all of his stuff in the vaults and the mountains, build houses for Hubbard and all that. And that was all Hubbard believed, that he was going to be coming back. And that's why he wanted those houses, he wanted those materials. And that's why CST was set up, was so that if anything happened on this planet, his materials would be safe and could be used, and that if he went off, he truly believed in his mind that he was going off to other sectors of the galaxy, that he could come back, and he wanted these materials kept, okay, in such a state that basically they could be drawn through the atmosphere up to a spaceship. Okay, and I'm not kidding you, that was what his intentions were. So anyway, so that's what Earl Cooley had to say. They then had, I'm going to show you a couple of pictures here. Remove this. Okay. Then after Earl Cooley spoke, David Miscavige introduced Pat Broker. And this is a picture of Pat Broker at the event. And people, even Sea Org members like myself and messengers who had been around for a long time, they hadn't seen Pat in 6 years. And I did happen to see him a couple of years earlier when I had to take some documents to David Miscavige at a truck stop so that he could give them to Pat. And Pat had a full beard down to his chest almost, and long hair. Well, he shaved all that stuff off because he basically was being incognito when he was handling L. Ron Hubbard's security while he was out. But anyway, Pat was introduced, and then he then went over the fact that L. Ron Hubbard had completed his research and had completed OT8, and that he completed OT9 and OT10, and that these things would soon be released. And so that was what he was there to tell everyone. And he showed a picture this one here, actually held this up as one of the worksheets of L. Ron Hubbard's auditing on some of the upper OT levels. And all those numbers, you can't read it, but it's basically a set of 3 numbers, then another set of 3 numbers, and then all the rest of those are zeros. And this was L. Ron Hubbard going back in time to an incident that occurred how many ever trillions of years ago that is. And this was just to impress the public that, oh, L. Ron Hubbard has gone way back into time, and he's solved the problem of amnesia on the whole track, meaning how come when you die you forget everything, right? Something that people would like to know, obviously, but it was a bunch of BS, to be honest with you. Okay, but anyway, this was again to keep the public enthralled with L. Ron Hubbard and his works, and it was all bullshit. BS. That's all I want to say about that for right now. Now, we're going to do a separate video on Pat Broeker in regards to what he said at this event, and I'll go through it in more detail. But just suffice it to say, he was there to basically say, look, you know, he continued and he completed his research when he had actually died of a stroke. And as a matter of fact, Pat Broeker hadn't even been around him for several months because L. Ron Hubbard had kicked him off the property that they were at until Scientology had gotten an all clear of all the legal suits. He was so angry with Pat Broeker. He wasn't even there when L. Ron Hubbard died. Then they brought out International Management to introduce them to the public. And it's kind of hard to see, but right to left, that's Heber Jentz, who was the president of the Church of Scientology International. Next to him was Vicky Asnaran, who was the Deputy Inspector General for the Religious Technology Center at the time. Next to her, second from the left, is Guillaume Lasserre, who was the Executive Director International. And then on the far left is Ray Medoff, who was the Senior Case Supervisor International, who was responsible for the future technology of Scientology and putting out all the OT levels. And they were introduced, and they all said a little something basically to reassure the public that Scientology was in good hands. The event ended, and we basically had to drive. Luckily, I had a car for my position, so we drove back about an hour and a half to the base in Gilman Hot Springs. This is me and my wife around that time period. And my wife, we had stayed silent throughout the entire event, and then we got in the car, and then it was natural for there to be some grief, some upset, particularly Julie, because she'd been a messenger since she was a young teenager for L. Ron Hubbard, both on the flagship Apollo in Clearwater, at the W base in La Quinta, and then of course at Gold. And so she had basically, like Janice, been raised by L. Ron Hubbard, so she was a little upset. So we talked about, well, what are some of the positive things that would come out of it? And one of the things that we were both happy about is that Annie Broeker was finally going to be able to come back to the Gold base, and everybody was going to be able to see her because she was very popular with the other messengers and people, and Pat Broeker was going to be able to come back as well. So that was one of the positives that we felt would come out of this event and what happened. The next day after the event, on January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up on takeoff, and it's a famous disaster that happened here in the United States. And Miscavige came back to the base, and he was happy that this basically overshadowed the death of L. Ron Hubbard in the media and in the news in 1986. I mean, there was no internet or anything like that. So basically, the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster just blanketed and wiped out the fact, because really Miscavige and Broeker and all them, they did not want this widely known that Hubbard had died. In these days, they didn't have the internet, and they couldn't stream the event live. They videotaped that death event, and then it was sent out to all the organizations to show the public, like on a videotape where they could see it themselves, right? So, and then I think, as a matter of fact, different people from international management flew to each of the continents in order to be able to hold similar events and to announce it all. But the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, in which Amy Scobie's uncle, Dick Scobie, was the flight commander, he was killed in that disaster. And she was, of course, a Sea Org member with us at the Gilman Hot Springs blank. So they were thankful, unfortunately, for that disaster, because it basically hid the death of L. Ron Hubbard. Okay, this is where L. Ron Hubbard was. This is Creston, California. It's near there. They had a ranch, bought a ranch there. Pat Broker, Annie Broker, and L. Ron Hubbard. They paid cash for it. I think it's called Whispering Winds Ranch or whatever. This is the actual ranch house, and this is a more recent photo. This is from very recently, a drone thing, and it did not look as nice as it does here. As a matter of fact, the house was under renovations the entire time that L. Ron Hubbard owned it, and he lived in his Bluebird recreational vehicle by the stables. That's where he lived. He did not live in this house. He never lived in it because it was never completed. They were renovating it. This is another shot of that house in that ranch area there. And then this is the stables area. And in that parking lot there is where L. Ron Hubbard's RV, recreational vehicle, that's where he lived. That's where they stayed. And that's where he ended up doing his work, and then also where he passed away. He died there in his chair. And the only people that were there were Annie Broker and Steve Foff. All right. And he had had a stroke a couple of days or a little bit of time before he actually died on the 24th of January. So they had actually called up a doctor, a Scientology doctor named Dr. Gene Dank, and then also Ray Midoff, who was the senior CS international I mentioned. He was called up. This is about maybe a week before that, and he was taken up there. And David Miscavige was never called up there. Okay. David Miscavige did not find out about this location until Hubbard died, and then they called up all of the different Sea Org members up there to deal with the property and that type of thing. But he never went up there. He never saw L. Ron Hubbard before he died. The only person who saw him was Ray Midoff, who was brought up there to process and do some auditing on Hubbard before he passed away, and Dr. Gene Dank. And like I said, Hubbard died of a stroke. Anyway, in a mobile home here, right here at the stables at the property. This is, again, a current view of the property, aerial view. It's lush green here right now. But over, it was, what they did as a sort of a front was raising horses and animals. And this is the other thing we found out too, is that Pat Broker was buying all these horses, and that's a racetrack up there on the top in the middle with the big circles. That's a racetrack for training the horses. And then in the center, the two intersecting circles, that's the symbol for Church of Spiritual Technology is supposed to put down on the ground at any one of the locations where Hubbard's archives are, so that if Hubbard ever comes overhead in a spaceship, he can actually find that symbol and he knows where he's at and come home. That's why those symbols are in the ground. But anyway, this looks very lush and beautiful, but it was not that way when Hubbard was still alive. It was just them taking care of the property. They had contractors doing the work, building those fences, that type of thing. But that's where he was. And like I said, we found out afterwards that Pat Broker wasn't even there for the last several months of Hubbard's life, and that Hubbard had become basically a cranky old man, and he had been very sick and very ill. And actually, Annie Broker was really having a hard time dealing with him. Anyway, and this is where Hubbard died. Right after the event, this issue, it's a flag order that was put out called the Sea Organization, the Sea Org in the Future, and it was put out by L. Ron Hubbard, and he promoted himself to the rank of Admiral from Commodore, and he retired the rank of Commodore. He then promoted Pat and Annie Broker to the ranks of loyal officers, which was a rank that's mentioned in the OT3 materials, about the body things and all that, were loyal officers, and that rank had never existed in the Sea Organization, but it was given to Pat and Annie Broker. And this is where the impression was given that Pat and Annie Broker were to take over and basically be in charge of Scientology. It turns out that Pat Broker had written this issue after L. Ron Hubbard died and had it issued, and it was a fraud. Okay, so this was sent out to all of the Scientology Sea Org members, and it was out for a couple of weeks, and then next thing you know, it's being pulled back. And Miscavige told me at the time that it was a fraud. They found out that it was a fraud and that they were pulling back that issue and getting rid of it. Sorry about that. Misha had to interrupt. Anyway, what was the other thing that was found out too was that Pat Broker, after L. Ron Hubbard died, he just wanted to continue and carry on raising horses. They had buffalo there and llamas and different animals. In other words, rather than trying to expand Scientology, he just wanted to continue carrying on what he was doing, which was dealing with animals. And that Annie decided that she was going to continue to live at that Creston property. And then I was tasked with getting staff to send up there. And I think we sent 10 or 15 people up there, married couples, up there to work. And that was my job, to get those people up there to basically maintain the ranch, which had no purpose whatsoever anymore because L. Ron Hubbard was dead. He was gone. And so that was began the whole Game of Thrones to see who was going to take over and control Scientology. Was it going to be David Miscavige? Was it going to be Pat Broker? Was it going to be Annie Broker? What was going to go on? And I cover that very well in this video here that's on our page called Miscavige Takes Control. And Janice and I both go into detail about how Miscavige took out Pat and Annie Broker, and became the chairman of the board of Religious Technology Center. If you have not seen this video, I'm putting a link down below in the description, so you can link onto it after this video if you want to watch it. It's well worth it. It's got photographs and lots of details. If you wanted to find out how Miscavige took over Scientology after L. Ron Hubbard died, watch this video. He was not the person that was supposed to take over and run Scientology. Okay, there was a whole plan by L. Ron Hubbard that had been known for years, and Miscavige basically short-circuited it, took over everything, and the rest is history, as they say. So anyway, you can watch that video. Like I said, I put a link in it down below for you to watch. So anyway, these are pictures of L. Ron Hubbard as an old man. On the left, this was when he was in New York in 1974, where he grew out his hair and looked like a slovenly old man. And then on the right, this is one of the last photographs ever taken of L. Ron Hubbard and his wife, Mary Sue Hubbard, at a birthday party. And this was at the base, the secret base in La Quinta, California, at the house that Hubbard had there that was called Rifle. And so that's what he looked like shortly before he basically took off. And it's not shortly before, because he then came to the gold base, and he was living in Hemet at the time that he took off with Pat and Annie for good. But this is pretty soon, towards the last time that he saw Mary Sue Hubbard, and she went to prison for the Snow White, the infiltration of the government, and of course she fell on her sword to protect L. Ron Hubbard, her husband. And like I said, when he died, he left very little money for her. She was taken care of until the end of the day she died. She got to keep the house that she had, but she's been erased from the history of Scientology. They've taken her out of photographs. They've erased any references to her, yet she had been by Hubbard's side for years and years and years. So that's the deal with that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this short video. I just wanted to ask you, please subscribe to our channel if you're interested in these stories, and hit that like button, and you can write comments or questions down below. It helps get the word out to other people, so please subscribe to our channel. And if you have any questions, like I said, you can ask in the comments section below. And then finally, if you feel like it and you want to donate to our channel, the best way is to buy us a coffee. There's a link down in the description. Just click on that link, and if you want to donate to our channel, you can do so there. The money that we get, we put back into it. And then the last thing I wanted to mention here is that if you're interested in any of our channel merchandise, shirts, hoodies, mugs, autographed books by Janice, Wellcome, it's all available in our merchandise shop. You just click on the link in the video description, and also we've highlighted several of the products on this video as well. And you just click on them, place your order, and we will get those things out to you as soon as we can. There'll be some more videos. I just read over Pat Broker's speech at the event, and I want to dissect that as well. But Janice will be back soon in the near future. But in the meantime, we want to thank you for watching. We want to thank you for your support of our channel. And until the next video, bye-bye.